First 6 months of 2018 versus the first 6 months of 2017, number of ICOs, capital raised, stability of the market, how does it look year on year?
Vastly more capital has been raised. That ICOs at this point last year were still a novelty, and you were just starting to see the beginning of the wave. But we're now into a market that is, probably going to raise somewhere between 3 to 5 billion in the first half of this year in ICOs. And there have been hundreds and hundreds of new issues. You also, a year ago, didn't have the beginnings yet of the big run-up in the crypto values. The big march from about 2,000 to 20,000 in the value of Bitcoin was mostly something at the tail end of last year. We had then something of a collapse in January, but now, really a 3-month rally in February, March, April, and so forth.
So whenever you see this sort of adoption, it usually indicates that the incumbent got greedy and had fat margins and was sticking its chin out. Is the backstory here that investment banks with 7% fees on IPOs and venture capitalists with extremely costly forms of capital, isn't this basically, doesn't the ICO market, if it ever becomes legitimate, essentially say that banks and venture capitalists got greedy and fat and weren't adding the value that their fees justified?
I think that's exactly right. People have been looking for an alternative source of entrepreneurial finance. Going public through the equity market's extraordinarily expensive because you have the 7% commission, but you also have the tendency to underprice the shares by 10% and very, very high compliance costs to meet the requirements of the SEC. So I'm not sure that the investment banks are all alone in this, that a lot of people have thought that the several rounds of regulation, the Sarbanes-Oxley and Dodd-Frank laws and so forth, they've made it so onerous for a firm to list itself publicly that we've observed IPOs, vastly reduced. IPOs have all but stopped over the last decade in the US. And you're seeing firms like Uber, Airbnb, really indefinitely staying off the exchanges when ordinarily they may have gone public in the last generation.
So could Uber offer a coin that says, could you have an Uber coin that says unlimited free rides to this individual and the blockchain just tracks your identity to make sure you're not abusing it? And
biometrically with your fingerprint.
Right, because I spend $1,000 a month on Uber, $12,000 discount, cap rate of 5. So what is that? That's 200. I mean, that's a $250,000 coin supposedly, right?
I would think that a lot of these fintech companies, especially the ones in the peer-to-peer markets like ride sharing, might find it very appealing to have their own currency. It's even suggested that Amazon might put Amazon coin out there, because they're increasingly.
It sounds like
So I'm going to have to break that up, but what I want to focus on is the reason why banks are so afraid of crypto and especially ICOs, because you just heard it, there's over $1 million, and it's not even just the 7% they're going to charge upfront in fees to go public. And this is kind of like a cartel thing where, if you do want to go public, you're going to have to go through Goldman Sachs or one of these investment banks. And no matter how much money you raise and hard work you're going to do, these bankers who are just the middleman, the parasites, they charge a lot. And to be honest, they probably could charge 10% because there's no competition. So it's really good to hear that this ICO idea, even though right now it's unregulated and it's the Wild West, eventually, even if it doesn't become regulated, it's going to be a threat to the banks. And the banks realize that, hey, we got to bring down our fees. We can't just keep gouging people, because if they do, more and more people will turn to alternative forms of finance, and those bankers with their fat salaries and $1 million buildings they live in, and the best is the Wells Fargo, the $200 million severance package after you run a scam. All of that stuff hopefully will come to an end or will be reduced. Instead, when you get fired for committing bank fraud or a scam, you get only a $50 million severance package instead of a $200 million severance package. But that's why I invest in crypto, and I'm still very bullish on crypto, because our banking system is corrupt. They're very powerful. They basically own our politicians, and any kind of competition or threat to them is a good thing. Just make them more efficient. I don't think it's ever going to go away, but when there's other competitors that can offer less, that's good for the consumer. So let me know what you guys think, and I will talk to you soon.